Hi, so this is part 2. This is installing a Gates CDX belt onto a 2011 First District Trek bike. You'll see it's in the same condition where we left part 1, but we're going to need some new tools, and I'll get those right now. Okay, so the first thing I'll get is the new parts. You can zoom right. This is the order sheet that I used. So, do you want to flip it that way? So that you can get the part numbers right off there if you want. So, it was a 55 tooth front sprocket. I stayed with 55 tooth. It was a 22 tooth rear sprocket. I stayed with a 22 tooth. And it was 118 teeth, and I stayed with that. Now, the guy at Gates told me that I could play around with those gear ratios, but the distance between the front and rear sprockets, actually, it gets a little bit affected, and this stuff is pretty expensive, and I wasn't sure it was going to work, so I didn't do that. But honestly, I'd like a 21 tooth rear sprocket so I could go a little faster on the flat stuff, but you know, no big deal. So this is the new ones. You can see it's pretty cool. It rides in this center track. This center is going to keep the belt from falling off the side, and supposedly that's better. It seems to me the load-bearing surface is a little wider. I'm not ultimately sure this is going to last any longer, because I have a feeling that the reason the belts fail is that they go from, you know, tension to compression millions of times going around the wheel. So I don't know, you know, but check back in 3 or 4 years and we'll see how long this thing lasted. But hopefully it's completely maintenance free and easy to use like the other one, and it just sits there, and every 3 years I have to spend a couple $100. That's not a big deal to me. So the next part here, and you can zoom in on this. These are replacement screws so that they can get the part numbers off those are these screws here, which actually effectively tension the belt. This one. Those things strip. They're button head cap screws, which are a bad application for button head cap screws. But you can get new ones. Let's see, they're M5x30 button head cap screws. The whole bag, I think it was $5, and I bought it on McMaster Car. Now, here's an old toothbrush and some oil, some light duty oil, and I'm going to use that to clean up the 9 spline in a second. A tape measure, that's not really critical, but it helps. Now, along with the tape measure is a ruler. This is just going to make sure that the belt is straight, because the problem is that the pulleys do not sit displaced from the center line of the bike an identical amount. So you don't really know. You know, with the old CDC style pulleys, you say, okay, you know, they're lined up fore and aft. You would assume whoever designed this bike, you know, they were probably sitting at some CAD station and they got the two things lined up. Excuse me, not fore and aft, but right and left. But now I went to these new ones, and the guys at Gates were pretty helpful, but I couldn't find any information from Trek on where, in fact, you know, where the pulley sits. So I'll actually compare them with the old ones, and you'll see what I'm saying. So you can see that basically the load-bearing surface here of the new one is more or less in the middle. But on this one, it's not. This is the old one. So in here, it's not even close to the middle. You can see that the mating surface here, which locates it, is way outside the center line. Or, you know, it's definitely not in the middle of the belt. So I kind of guessed on it, and honestly, I guess I'm going to get lucky, you know, as it is. And there's that spacer. They said you just have to play around with the spacers until you get the whole thing right. You know, so that's the ruler, the belt, the 2 clamps. That's just to make sure that the pulleys are lined up and the belt is not crooked. You know, it's not twisted like this, because that would be hard to see. It's disappointing that they didn't sort of help you transition to the new style, this CDX style, but you know, I guess that is what it is. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is clean up the 9 spline, put a little oil on the toothbrush, and just clean all the grime and grit out of the 9 spline. If you were to mess up this 9 spline, I don't know, that'd probably be a lot of money. I don't really know. I don't want to do it. So this is all clean now. I mean, it might take you more or less time. I don't know. And then these screws, the whole thing should really be cleaned of grime in any of these mating areas, any of these precision areas. Get the road and the dirt grit out. I mean, my bike, so basically, it's under an awning, so it doesn't get rained on, but I mean, I ride it all year long, so the thing just gets killed with sand and salt and everything. Okay, so first, let's do the rear sprocket. And so now
unpause.
So this here, I just am going to guess that I want this mating surface, okay? So actually, let me be precise here. Oh, and the file, right? The file is another tool that you might need. This is going to locate the rear pulley in this axis, right? And it's my suspicion, looking at my old pulleys, that I want the center line of the belt to be as close to the middle of the wheel, you know, this imaginary middle of the wheel down in here, as I can. So you can see that this thing could go on like this, or it could go on like this. Could technically go on either way. Now, I'm going to put it on so that this flange is outside the bike, meaning that the belt moves as far as it can go inside the bike. And I'm not going to use that spacer. And we're going to see how well we do. Okay, so there, this is on, right? The rear pulley's on. We're going to put the spanner nut back on. You know, clean it up if it's grimy and gritty. Maybe a little bit of light oil. Don't soak the thing in oil though. You know, just, you can see there's really no oil to be seen. Now, you don't want to mess up the threads on this thing. So if it's not lined up perfect, don't force it. And I can't even do it unless it's flat. Okay. Okay, there, it went on. Just goes on super easy if it's all clean and the threads aren't crossed and everything. Okay, now the spanner wrench will tighten it. Now, the nice part is I don't know, from part one we had to keep it from spinning, but now the natural pawl mechanism inside the rear hub prevents it from spinning, right? This is what you pedal against. It's sort of a ratchet or a pawl. So I'm going to get this fairly tight. That's pretty tight. I believe the mechanical action naturally tightens it. So, you know, we don't have to kill it tight. But now the rear pulley's on. And that's all set. So now we can put the front pulley on. So let me think about this now. So again, we can choose, well, how do we want to put this pulley on, right? Because it can go on either way, and that's going to displace the belt either closer to the center line of the bike or further away. And let's look at this. This is the old one. This one looks like it goes close to the center line. So, well, this is hard to see. I know this is not going to be an easy thing to see. So, here we go. I mean, this is sort of a useless thing to say unless you have this exact bike, but the white text is on the outside. But you're going to want to think about exactly how to set up the spacers on this, because these are not one-for-one part replacements. As you can see, I had to take that 2 millimeter little ring, this little black ring. I'm not using it anymore. So, you know, is what it is. It would have been, okay, it would have been nice to have a little more information, but we didn't. Okay. So now, put on these nuts. I believe these are M5, I think. And here's these are the screws, this is the nut. So I'll put the nut on from the back, and you see what I just did? It actually locates here, can you swing around real quick? This way? The diameter of this nut pokes through the mating surface of the 5-star. So you want it to just pop into place. See that? It kind of popped. And then put the screw on. Just finger tight for now. If this thing is not on right, what's going to happen is the pulley is going to run out of round, and the bolt will become more and less tight depending on where the pulley is as you pedal it, and that's not going to be a good thing. What a headache. It's easier with the Allen wrench on it. Finger tight. Here's a nut. Here's a screw. Don't ruin the thread on these things, because I don't know how you get new ones. I mean, I'm sure they can be found, but I don't want to find them. The nut goes on the back, the thing with the slot, and the screw goes on the front. And here's the last one. Again, nut on the back, screw on the front. Okay, now, since those diameters located, I'm not really worried about the thing being displaced. I mean running out of round, so I'm going to go ahead and just tighten it. Now the backs are not spinning. I have my finger on the back nut to see if it actually spun. If it did, I'd have to use this Shimano tool to hold the back. But it doesn't appear to be spinning on this one, so whatever. Tighten it. Pretty tight, I think. I'm going to go real tight. I mean, the bike's not going to fall apart if these come loose, but you know, I don't want to deal with that either. I don't want to be riding to work and have this thing rattling or falling apart on me. Or, you know, getting loose. Oh, pretty tight here. If you had a torque wrench, I don't know what it'd be set at, but I don't want to say a number either without a torque wrench, because I'd probably say the wrong number. But you can see I'm basically giving it, I'm basically giving it all this little tiny Allen wrench can give it, or that I can give it on this tiny Allen wrench. There, I don't know, tight. I'll try and put an update on the YouTube if I didn't if any of these things end up loose, but I hope they don't. Okay, so now we got the rear pulleys on, the front pulleys on. If you don't have this exact model bike, that's probably the hardest thing, is figuring out exactly which way to put these pulleys on, because you can put the flange either, it goes either way. So this is a subtlety now. So now we'll put the belt on, but before putting the belt on, it's absolutely critical that this whole area is free of metal burrs or dings or divots. So I have this little tiny file, and I'm not going to file my frame completely gone, but I'm just going to get rid of the burrs from the old screws. And you'll say, well, how smooth does it have to be? Well, it has to be smooth enough such that when you tension the belt with the belt tensioning screw, the jacking screw, it actually moves the belt. It doesn't just interfere with some metal crud you have in your frame, or I don't know, maybe it wasn't machined right at the I don't know. Those things need to be able to move, those rear axle brackets. I don't know what these black things are called. We'll call them the rear axle bracket. I'm not sure what they are. So, and anyways, this is important. So I'm just going to use brand new. I had a bad experience once with a flat tire and retensioning the belt, and it became a giant nightmare, these little screws. So I just put brand new ones in. I mean, this is probably 20 cents. Doesn't matter. And they can go almost all the way in. I mean, you can put them all the way in, but then you'll see what's going to happen is that you're just going to leave yourself more to do with the Allen wrench, which is kind of a pain. So I don't know, I'll leave it sticking out, call that a 1/4 inch. Here's the other one. I'll put a new screw, this screw here, the belt tensioning jacking screw. I'll put a new one in. Do I need to put a new one in? I don't know. Why not, right? I have a whole pack. Okay, so, well, I can't stress enough how important it is that this area of the bike that these rear axle mounting brackets can actually move around in there, and they're not just stuck when you put them in there. So if you have to beat them in with the hammer, that probably means that that area needs to be cleaned up a little bit. So we'll put these, we'll put the belt on now. So now the belt goes on, because this frame spacer here has to be taken out, and these things get in the way of getting the frame spacer out. So I take out this screw here with this M6, take the frame spacer out. It just kind of, you can pull it up, it deflects a little bit, not hard. Now the belt goes through. A belt, to me, it appears 100% symmetrical, so it doesn't go on one way or the other. Either way works fine. This thing, I mean, you can see there's kind of like a cup and a cone deal in here, so it was only going to fit in well one way. Now on the tip of this strange screw here, which appears to me to be aluminum, and there's Loctite on it. Oh, that was the other material that I got. Blue Loctite, medium strength Loctite. We'll put a drop of Loctite on it. This is Loctite 242. There we go. This screw to me appears aluminum, but what it goes into is definitely aluminum. So you don't want to use a lot of torque on this thing, or you'll wreck it. You'll either the screw, or I don't know, the insert that it goes into inside the frame. This says 10 Newton meters. 10 Newton meters, I did the conversion. I think it's 7 foot-pounds or 6 foot-pounds. That's nothing. So I'm not even going to use the long side of the Allen wrench. I'll do everything I can do with the little stubby side of the Allen wrench. And I'm not going to strip out that screw on the stubby side of an Allen wrench. And we'll call it 7 foot-pounds here. Maybe that's not quite 7 foot-pounds. I don't know. There we go. Fine. It doesn't have to be tight. The stubby side of the Allen wrench would have been fine. Okay. Now, these brackets go in. So we'll start again with the jacking screw about 1/4 of an inch out. These have blue Loctite on them too. Now, these are mechanically necessary to riding down the road. So if these screws fall out going down the road, the bike's going to fall apart and you're going to crash. So you don't want that to happen. So put some Loctite on it. There, I put too much Loctite on it. Oh well. And this is, here we go. I mean, these things only really go on one way. So see that? I didn't have to beat it with a hammer to get it to go on. I mean, if you have to tap it with the mallet a little bit, okay, but if it really just won't go on. I remember the first time I tensioned the belt after the flat tire, it was a headache to get that thing to move around in there. And we'll just put them finger tight for now. We'll do the other side too. Yeah, these are not the same brackets, so they'll only go on one side. I mean, it's pretty obvious which side they go on. They just won't work at all the other way. And you want the button head of the cap screws has to be facing out. I don't think there's any more Loctite needed throughout the whole thing. Where's the other screw? Now, we don't want these tight because the mounting screws for the rear axle bracket, or the clamping screws, I guess, they will prevent the belt from being able to be tensioned. They'll prevent the whole thing from moving. So I'm going to tighten them, and then I'm going to loosen them a half turn. So till I know they're not tight. So tighten and then loosen a half turn. Tighten, loosen a half turn, tighten, and loosen a half turn. Okay, see how these move in and out? That is critical to getting the belt to cooperate, tensioning the belt to not, to be feasible. Maybe, okay, if you got to tap them in a little bit, I guess, but if you've got to get a sledgehammer and beat the thing, then, you want to clean it up first. Okay, so let me just do a mental checklist here. The rear wheels were ready to go on. So I can't remember here. Oh, so you got to get the belt here. Can you come around the other side? The belt has to go around the axle nut. I guess that's an axle nut. And then it can go in the vertical dropout. Actually, no. I know how it works. Here. So you need to get it on both pulleys first before seating the vertical dropout. So it's on the rear pulley. And now look, I'm not prying this thing with my hand or anything like that. It's just if you shouldn't have to push it, or use a pry bar or anything. and I can get the front one to go on just nice and easy. Ah, it's a little springy. There, now they're both on, right? And I didn't have to pry it. Like, I know sometimes on dirt bikes you roll a chain on or something like that. Don't do that here. It just goes on with finger tension. Nothing gets pried or rolled, or you don't do the crank. None of that. So, I guess now this axle nut can be tightened on the other side here. You know, anyone who's changed a flat tire has had to tighten this before, so this is not that interesting. So the vertical dropout is seated all the way down. The axle nut, you know, this can be pretty tight in my opinion. I mean, you definitely don't want that to loosen up. You don't want to break it either, but you know, you should consult the seating torque spec on that for your own, because your arm and my arm will be different. There we go. So, now we're pretty close actually. Got the front sprockets on, and see, there's no guide rail on this belt, but it's not going to fall off because it has this cut in the middle of it, and then there's the mating cut. So, anyways, how do we tension the belt? This is the biggest headache of the whole process. So all 4 clamping screws for the rear bracket are loose, right? You take this, I think it's 3mm Allen wrench, put it through the hole in the frame into the head now of these pan heads. So I'm in the head of this thing now. And as I loosen this screw, it will extend the jacking screw, which will push the belt and make it tighter. So I'm going to go lefty-loosey, and the belt's going to get tighter actually. And this takes a little while. If you have a 3mm T-handle, could you back up just a little? Then this would be a great application for a 3mm T-handle. Because, and now I'll do the other side. You want to keep the sides approximately even. The way that I do that is, well, I'll show you when I come around the other side, but I'll tell you now, is that I look at the distance between the rear of the frame and the rear, the back of that black bracket. And I keep that approximately the same on the 2 sides. Or else what's going to happen is the wheel will not be, you know, the bike will sort of have a crooked wheel, and I don't know, maybe that makes it always try and turn, I'm not sure. But you don't want that. So now what am I talking about, right? Can you come around here? This side? This distance between the back of the frame here, okay, this silver surface, and the back of this black surface here, should be whatever the difference. They don't line them up, right? Don't try and line these 2 surfaces up, but whatever the gap is here, or however much the black protrudes the silver on this side, we want to match that on the other side. And then we'll know that the rear tire is approximately, is pretty close to straight. Now, how much do we tighten the belt? That's the $1,000,000 question. Now, Gates has an application on how to do this. You can get it for your iPhone. I don't have an iPhone, but supposedly it worked real nice. What am I going to do? I'm going to take a simpler approach, because I've had to tighten this. I've dealt with these belts before. It appears to me there's not a downside of basically going pretty tight within the constraint we have, which is the head of these jacking screws just strips out anyways. So, I don't know, it's a crude way of doing it, but I'm going to go more or less as tight as I can get it. The other problem is, and I've dealt with this industrially, is that if you don't tighten these things enough, they just loosen up. Like, they loosen up a little bit in the first couple days, right? Because the pulleys wear a little bit, and the belt, you know, like it has mold release or whatever on it. So you want it a little tighter on day 1, and then on day 7 it'll be perfect. So How tight is the belt? I don't know. You know, you should probably download that app from Gates, or they sell these ultrasonic devices that there's two different ways to do it. You can see, well, the force here, right? Or you can go like string it like a guitar and measure the frequency there. I don't have either of those devices, so I just do this simple thing, and I'll try and put in the comments, you know, if it really doesn't work, then I'll try and put that in the comments. I'll try and update the instructions. But, you know, on the other belt, I did it and it worked. And now again, I'm matching the displacement here side to side. However much I move these brackets back, that has to be kept approximately constant. I can already tell that now. So now I'm gonna have to go back in on this side. And right actually loosens the belt. Isn't that weird? You'd think righty tighty, but not in this application. Righty loosey. What I'm doing now is I'm looking at the gaps on these two things, and I'm getting it constant. I'm making it so that those surfaces protrude about the same amount. And I'll show you afterwards that they in fact do protrude approximately the same amount. Now, this is where, you know, I guess I showed mechanically how to replace the belt. To get the tension right, you probably want to download that iPhone app, or you can get these little Gates makes gauges that you clip on here and you pull them, and I guess they'll get it perfect. So how tight is this? Yeah, pretty tight. You know, I also don't want to be tightening this thing next week because that's a headache. It beats up the stairwell of my house, and I just don't want to deal with that. Okay, so now we're just going to check here. The belt seems tight, right? How tight is it? I don't know, pretty tight. Here, the distance here, we'll call it about the wrench I was using. 3 millimeters, the black protrudes, and then we'll come over the other side, and we'll call it the same, 3 millimeters. Okay, so the belt is tight. Now, this is critical. These are actually, you know, the important screws. The jacking screws do not actually hold the bike together. These clamping screws do. These can be pretty tight. So that's basically everything I can give it. And I've used Allen wrenches quite a bit, so they're probably pretty tight. Again, you can get, I'm sure there's a torque spec on these.